Welcome, everyone. The ICMA Learning Lab is pleased to present this online education program, Data to Action, How Sugar Land, Texas is Leading the Way in Community Engagement, brought to you by ICMA Strategic Partner Zencity. For technical assistance, please email learning@icma.org. Today's presentation will last up to 60 minutes and includes a question and answer opportunity, so please submit your questions at any time using the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen. During Q&A, our presenters will answer as many questions as time allows. It is my pleasure to introduce today's presenters, Michael Goodrum, the City Manager of Sugar Land, and Eyal Fetter, the CEO and co-founder of Zencity. Presenters, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Julian. Excited to be here.
Good to be here.
Well, thanks again, Julian, and thank you everybody for joining us. I'm very excited to share the virtual stage today with one of the people I look up the most to in the city management space, Mike Goodrum. And what I'm really excited to have a chance to share with you all is the incredible approach that Sugar Land has to planning, performance management, and project engagement with thinking about residents and resident input along the way. Mike told us as we were working on this that the City of Sugar Land really tries to engage their residents in every step, every moment of the day, and in every step in their decision making. And I think it really, really pops, and I'm very excited to have an opportunity to spotlight the work this incredible city is doing. And before we dive in and I hand it over to Mike, I also want to call out that Sugar Land, as the entire region, has been going through some very challenging times over the last few weeks with Hurricane Beryl, and it's been really inspiring to see the work that the city is doing. And I really appreciate, Mike, you joining us when I know some of the city is still with debris and still without power. So thank you so much for taking a moment to help educate everybody while you're dealing with all that. Without further ado, if we can share our screen, just to give a quick overview of what we're hoping to learn today. If we click 2-3 slides in, we'll talk about how Sugar Land is using community input in their planning and performance management process. We'll talk a little bit about Zencity's tools that have been put to use in this context, and then we'll talk about specific examples from Sugar Land's work. And as Julian mentioned, we'll end with a Q&A, both some questions that I want to ask you, Mike, and then we'll open it up to the panel. So if you click in one more, Haley, after our nice pictures here, what we hope that you'll gain from today is to get some actual actionable strategies of how to be proactive in your community engagement, and how that can be actually incorporated into your work and workflows, how to develop actionable plans based on community input to make changes in policy and budget and investment in the city, and how to use data to involve, to make change in the organization and involve key stakeholders in the process. So with that, Mike, I want to turn it over to you to share a little bit about Sugar Land's approach to planning.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited to be here. And Eyal, it's interesting. A couple of years back, we were chatting about just the challenge of engaging the public, and how we wanted to engage them have them at the center of everything. And we're limited by a lot of our platforms, limited by your 2 or your 1 year surveys, limited by town halls that have the same people that show up. And so kind of came up with this concept to where and we've been a long-term partner with Zencity, but to where we could use their platform and build some new platforms as well that help us have our community be at the center of everything that we're doing. And so definitely excited to share some of this. We have a long way to go, but I'm definitely excited about the progress we've made. So at the end of the day, we have all the traditional community engagement tools that I think most cities have, and those are great. We're trying to just move to another level. And so what we do is we survey our residents kind of continuously. And so we have a statistically valid survey that goes out every 3 months, to where every 3 months we're gauging our performance as a city. We're gauging satisfaction with the city. we're able to then drill down into areas to identify any areas for special attention. We'll go through some of those as we go through kind of more detail on them, but it gives us the ability to, if we see that we're scoring low in a certain area, we can then engage that group and drill down more so that we can understand what issues we're seeing there. And then this data is all, just to have it does no good. To just have it in a platform, it serves nobody any purpose at all. And so we have a process to where every quarter I have a quarterly evaluation with my council. We go through this data. We just created a community engagement. It's a customer experience director position. They're responsible for the customer experience. And so they're providing updates to our leadership team every month. So this is just, you have to use this data. It has to be part of how you are running your city. We just recently got done developing our strategic plan. And so this aspect was able to help us refine it as we went to make sure the council was aligned with where the community was. And then ultimately, we need to measure the performance and impact over time. We're still early on in this phase because we're newer to this, but that's going to be something that over the next couple of years will be exciting for us to do. If you can hit the next slide real quick. And so this right here, yeah, I like it because it's kind of my dashboard that I can go on every morning, and it just shows me the different aspects. I can see we've got the organic sentiment, how we have our community surveys, how we're performing quarterly. We have our experience surveys, and so our long-term goal is every service the city provides will have real-time customer engagement, real time. So like we've already implemented in our permits area, everybody that is receiving a permit has the opportunity. We have a very high response rate to provide surveys. And then we're able to use the Zencity AI and their platform to help us find trends, to help us find areas for improvement. We'll drill into that a little bit more. But I like this slide because it kind of plays it all out. And then we can go in and drill into any topic we want to drill into. And so I just threw this in here because it's a big part of what my job is going through and kind of checking this out. And so at this time, I think I'll turn it over to Eyal for your portion.
Thanks, Mike. So before we dive into a lot of the specific examples of the work that Sugarland has been doing, as Mike mentioned, Sugarland has been a really great design partner of ours and helped cultivate and imagine a lot of our capabilities and really help push us forward on a lot of how we do things. And I want to share a little bit of our approach that is based on my long discussions with Mike and a few other ICMA members on how to build these tools, and a little bit about us as a company and what we enable. So overall, I'll say we are proud to be the world's largest community engagement platform today. We serve a little bit over 300 agencies that support 200 million people, and that starts from 5 out of 5 largest cities in the U.S., New York, LA, Chicago, Houston, all the way Phoenix, all the way through incredible partners like Sugarland, and to tiny communities ranging from 5,000 residents and up. So today we have customers in 43 different states, and we're really, really proud to support so many ICMA members. If we click in one more, we'll see that the main thing that we're focused on and the vision that we're inspired by work of Mike and others is that we hear that to do the important work of government, which I think we all here on the call agree is incredibly important, incredibly meaningful, you have to have a strong sense of trust with your community, right? If people don't trust that the city is working in their best favor, people will report crime when they see it to 911. They won't cooperate with investigations on the police side. They won't show up to get vaccinated when their county public health department is promoting a vaccination effort. And they won't support new services that are being rolled out. We will see a lot of great examples from that in Sugarland in a minute of how that trust helped roll out new initiatives and new services. But building trust is really, really the basic currency that we need to do a lot of the work in government. The challenge is, if we click in one more, is that trust is hard to come by and easy to lose. And we've researched this a lot and to understand how trust gets built. And one of the most important aspects of it is that in order to build trust, we have to first understand the needs, priorities, and expectations of our community, because only when we act on those expectations repeatedly can trust really, really be built. And I think that Mike's vision that he shared before, the work that Sugar Land is doing around engaging residents at every step of the way and engaging people around every service that they're getting from the city, that is the highest peak that we can expect of understanding community needs and priorities. But all of us need to understand that at different levels in order to be able to really build that trust. So the challenge is, and this is what we've been talking a lot about and Mike referred to in the beginning, if we click in one more, that the tools we have on hand today, while they're great for a lot of things, they're great for, that face-to-face interaction, and they're great, because we've been using them for years. A lot of them are very limited in our ability to really understand the needs and priorities of our community, especially at the level of granularity that allows us to take action, and especially at the level of representativenessability, that makes sure that we're actually hearing from our community. A lot of the tools that we have today, like the town hall meeting or the over the phone survey, these tools tend to be limited to what one of our city managers calls the STP problem, the same 10 people that show up to every community engagement opportunity. And the challenge is that when we hear from a very limited subset of our community, or when we hear from them, in very stale data once every 2 years, we're only getting a skewed view, a limited view of what a certain part of our community thinks, or what they think about a certain subtopic. And we can't take action on that. And sometimes if we take action on that, we're acting in the wrong direction. And that gives us a disservice for building trust. So if you click in one more, our solution to this, and that we've been working very closely with Sugar Land, and Sugar Land is really one of our model partners in the sense that they've helped us imagine and build a lot of this and push forward our capabilities and adopted this entire approach. It's built on a few basic concepts. One, a lot of our community is online. Today, more than 95% of the population reports that they're regularly active online. That includes older population, and includes non-English speaking population. Of course, the digital divide is real, but even if somebody doesn't have the newest iPhone or broadband at home, they are regularly active online very often. So if we think about meeting a lot of people, meeting people where they are, making it easy for them, meeting people online is very, very helpful. And second, and this is, I think, the most exciting thing about the work Sugar Land has been doing, in order to really engage people at different moments in their lives and really hear from different stakeholders, we have to have a multi-model approach to engagement. We can't expect everybody to show up at the town hall, or everybody to answer the survey, or everybody to post on social media. We have to really think about how we bring all this data together. And lastly, I'll say, if we're successful at doing the first two, reaching more people, reaching them with more ways to engage, we'll have a lot of data, and AI can help us make sense of that data and turn it actionable. So my last slide before I turn back to Mike to share some tangible examples, just to share a little bit about the Zencity platform that is deployed in Sugar Land. Our goal is to really bring together a lot of different ways of hearing the community into one clear narrative that helps take action. So we do a few things. One is social sentiment analysis. We look at what people are sharing online on Nextdoor, which we're the only ones that have access to, and on Facebook and Twitter and Reddit, on other platforms, and bring all that in. We run, as Mike said, a quarterly community satisfaction survey. We do that survey by meeting people online. We basically buy a lot of ads online to meet people wherever they're spending time. If they're playing Candy Crush on their phone, or scrolling through Instagram, or reading the Bible app, we'll find them where they are and present them with a survey about city services. We have an experience survey module, which Mike mentioned, that can integrate into existing CRMs or survey or service capabilities, and ask people how that specific experience was. And our digital engagement hub that can help share plans that the city is working on and get direct feedback on those specific plans. And all that comes together in the same database, and with some, buzzwords of AI, we help make sense out of that and tie it to specific processes like annual planning, like performance management, and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit about the tools that we've been developing alongside with Sugar Land, and how their vision has inspired us to bring a lot of this to life. And Mike, I'm happy to turn back to you to share some specific examples of how Sugar Land has been using this community input from the variety of voices to push policies and projects forward.
Right. Yeah, I'll give a number of examples, but I'll tell you the community surveying. We've been doing it now, I think, since 22. I think we started in late 22. It's been a huge change for us, and a big benefit to the council, because the reality is the council has to deal with the political aspects. They have to deal with their neighbors. There's so much more accessible to people. And so what this community survey has allowed us to do is every 3 months show that the council, like statistically valid survey results that show how we're doing in a number of areas. We have the same baseline questions every quarter, so we can just track how we're performing. But we also have several new ones that we put at the end, and we've really used those to kind of drive whatever we're considering for that next 3 months, whatever priorities or kind of questions that the council or the staff may have, to where we will add those in there and then get those results. And then we have the ability to then drill down. And so if, on the GO bond, I'll give you an example right here. This is one where we've used it extensively. We've got a strategic plan that is outlining a general obligation bond. We're looking at around $300 million that would be going to the voters later this fall. And every time, we have a GO bond, you have the same people that come out that complain about taxes, complain about whatever their issues are. But what we were able to do was first, staff provided what are the needs that staff believes that the community has, what's in our CIP, what do we believe? And then we were able to go out and do community surveying on that aspect, so we could get the data of what was actually important to our residents. Do they care about the quality of their sidewalks? Do they care about the quality of their streets? What's their willingness to invest? Because it's great if they want something, but are they willing to pay for it? And so having the ability to, at kind of each step of the way, whenever we meet with the council on the GO bond, where we'd have follow-up questions or we'd have to make some hard decisions, we could go back and really ask the public and engage additionally to find out that, okay, like for us, a senior center wasn't going to be high on a priority list, but a multi-purpose center, could be. And so it helped us refine it each step of the way and give the council and staff a lot of confidence that we were building a GO bond that was truly what the community wanted, what they wanted for their city. And able to do that really kind of in real time. And so every 3 months we'd go out. We could also engage special groups through the platform to drill down and ask additional questions. And so we were able to do that. We're able to design it to where this GO bond, it has not one political pet project, not everything is based on what the community wants, what the staff obviously understands what the needs are. And so this is just one example to where the confidence that our staff and our council could have that we were putting together the right proposal. And so it'll go to the voters later this year. And but this was one example of how we've used the platform. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is an interesting one, public transportation and mobility. So Sugar Land, we're outside of the Houston region. No real public transportation. And whenever we were developing this community survey, actually, Eyal and I were talking about, we needed questions that could be benchmarked for all cities, right? You couldn't just be what did Sugar Land want. And so we knew we would score poorly on public transportation. But we knew that it was a question we needed to have in here. And so when the results first started coming out around 22, the city council was very much focused on, we don't want buses. Yes, the community did not want buses. And so it was just like, that's the answer to it. But it really wasn't. And so we were able to drill down more, engage more, and realize that it wasn't just about did our residents want buses or not want buses. They were interested in alternative forms of public transportation. They were interested in getting away from having to use their car and have other opportunities. And so by engaging at each step of this way, we were over the last year and a half, we just finished up a feasibility study with Swift Cities for an aerial gondola program. We actually were the first city to do the agreement with Whisk Arrow we're currently in the process of designing and identifying the locations for vertiports for autonomous air taxis. And so that's an issue that probably would not have come out as what's an alternative to public transportation and mobility other than buses. And So that was one of the areas to where our residents wanted other options, and this was an option that they would support and that they've been really excited about. And then also within the last year, later this year, we'll be implementing our first microtransit solution, something that the community is really excited about. That quite frankly, if we wouldn't have gone through this process, we wouldn't have done these things, because we would have just dismissed it as the council is not interested in public transportation. And so those were some of the kind of the enhancements that we're expecting to see from going through this process, and then being able to engage with our community at a much higher level and a much more frequent level than before.
I think,
yeah.
Sorry, as you move to the next slide, Mike, I'll say that this is a great example of how the combination of different methods of listening to the community has been really effective, because on the one hand, we have the survey result that is showing that this is an issue and something the community cares about. And then we have our social media sentiment on how people are reacting to the announcement, for example, around the micro transit platform. And we can see how the community, what are the specific things they care about, and how are they reacting to some of the initiatives that we're putting in place.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things we've been, successful in is putting out stories to then use the organic sentiment analysis to really kind of drill down and get some more information. Now, with my council, that information is important, right? But it's not statistically valid. And so then what we'll do is take that information and then start surveying the public to really be able to drill down more. But we've been able to play those off of each other with a lot of success. Thanks for bringing that up. You go to the next slide, please. This is another one. Sugarland, we score really high in a lot of different areas. Public art was another one to where we scored low. We had a 51%. We're satisfied with the quality of it. And this is one to where we're a relatively new city, I would say, in public art, maybe 6-7 years. And so, but our staff really ran with this. When this information started becoming available, we were able to then drill down and do some additional surveys on, like, why is this? Why is it 51%? Do people even care that it's 51%? And what we really saw was that people wanted just more localized experiences. They wanted smaller type experiences. I think before we probably put more effort into the big, expensive, shiny public art. But what we were able to do when we drilled down was the public didn't care as much about the big, shiny public art. They cared more about the temporary art. They cared more about the experiential art. And things that were a lot more cost effective. And so we've been able to provide a lot of, I would say, additional public art, not at an additional expense, but just in a different way. And smaller things to, like, having live entertainment at our farmers market, or having pop-up of it. Even in the storm we just had, we took liberty to have pop-up events to be able to do this. And you'll see that our staff really took this as the motto for this next year is canvas the city. So they've taken this information and say they're passionate about, we're going to canvas this whole city now and make sure that somehow we're providing public art everywhere to where everybody will experience it. And then over the next couple of years, we'll be able to keep evaluating this and seeing, okay, how are we performing? What are we getting that percentage up to where we want it to be? And so this is just an example where, and I'll be honest, in Sugarland, a lot of stuff's had to be, there's been this perfectionist mentality and this fear of having, like, bad numbers out there, right? So, like, our surveys are always really high. I mean, our numbers are off the charts. And then you get into these areas to where, when we were developing this, we knew that public art was a question needed to be asked for a lot of cities. We knew public transportation. We knew we'd score low. And so part of it is just having the staff embrace okay, these are areas to where we don't have to be perfect. We can use this as a benchmark to then move to a higher aspiration. And so public art is one of those. Our staff's really excited about continuing to do this. We've got a number of new series of public art that we've been doing, is kind of shown above, but staff has really embraced this 51 number, and they're excited to canvas the city and improve it.
And we're already seeing a really big increase in the positive sentiment online. There was a 2,000% increase in social media interactions when the city started posting about the new mural. So we're already getting that quick read back
Oh
from
yeah,
the community when we're bringing everything together.
no
But
doubt, no doubt. Yeah,
I
no, it's
will say Mike is modest here a little bit, but Sugar Land is our highest ranked city in benchmarking of overall satisfaction with over 93% satisfaction right now. So very,
well,
very.
we're proud of that. We work really hard towards it. But this has enabled us to really kind of even drill down at a much higher level and understand like why is that, and be able to provide the services people want, and then maybe scale back on the ones that they don't necessarily care as much about. So no, we're definitely proud of the results we've been able to see. So next slide, please. Permitting, this was probably one of this has been our first step into this concept of real-time analysis of every service we're providing. The ultimate concept is if you take a ride in an ambulance, you're immediately having the opportunity to, how was your ride? If you get a ticket from a police officer, a warning, how was your experience? Permitting was our first step into it, and just being frank, our permitting process before this was atrocious. I mean, it was a point of contention with the council, with the business community. It was an area to where we just were not providing really, really good service. We didn't have the data. We've been made a big push just to have data over the last couple of years to understand and support our decisions. But this is an area to where we didn't have it. I couldn't even really tell the council or our business community how we were performing in this area. And so what we did here was just revamp the entire program. Every permit that comes through our office now has a survey that's attached to it that then goes into the Zencity platform. And what it's able to do is, a lot of times you have surveys. We've had surveys and they just go somewhere and they sit there, right? A lot of times they go to the manager responsible for that area. But there's not the analytics behind it. And so what we've been able to do with this platform is use the Zencity AI to determine, are there trends? Are there, are we seeing that on a certain day our performance score is going lower, that we need to drill down into, okay, what's happening on Thursdays afternoon? Do we need to peak up there? What are the aspects of from a staff level? How's each staff person scoring on a customer experience for their permits? And so we've gone from a program, and I don't have the previous scores, but I'll tell you, it was a continuous point in my evaluation of how we were doing horrible. So that tells you that we were not good at it. To now, our performance scored 92%. The public and the business community loves our program. Our 96% staff score, and our staff's really, really proud of that. Every time this score comes out, they're really proud of where their numbers are. But you'll see down here, we've had 33 improvement projects that have come out of this. We've got I think we've been able to streamline the number of permits that used to take 5 days. 34 permits used to take 5 days. Now they're taking 5 minutes. And so this is able to kind of gauge how we're doing in real time, every day, every minute, so that we can make decisions and understand the job that we're doing in this area. And ultimately, we're moving forward with our 311 right now. But ultimately, this will be the case for every service we provide. And so I'm really excited about where we're going with this aspect of it. Then we'll go to the next slide. This is a interesting one, and it's kind of like what cities, just the relevancy of cities, like what our purpose is. It used to be, it was a couple of basic things, but now you're starting to see, as we drill down, that this sense of community and loneliness is becoming a much, much bigger issue. Mental health becoming a much bigger issue through COVID. And so this was an item to where we really we picked up this sense of community among residents. And when we drilled down into it, you saw a lot of people, it was just a loneliness issue. They didn't have family, that they didn't have those opportunities. And so this is a smaller example of our staff then took this and said, what can we do to address this? Like one, is it our role to address it? And I'll tell you, probably 4 or 5 years ago, we would have said, no, this is not a role for us to address. But we've made a big shift in our city to where, our vision's different. It's not, most cities, it's you be the place to live, work, and play, right? That's like what a lot for us, we want to trailblaze. We want to really provide an experience for our residents and our employees and our businesses like that's better than they can even imagine. And that's what we focus on. How do you provide something better than they can even imagine? And so when you have that mindset, this sense of community and sense of loneliness in your community becomes something important to you. And so our staff has run with this. We're still in the early stages, but we've implemented the Sugarland Community Hub where people can join different clubs that they want. If you want to be in a dog walking club, or you want to be in a mom fitness club, or whatever the club you want to be, you can create your own club. And so we're just starting this process up. I'm excited about it because our staff's excited about it, and they really believe that this is an area to where they can change people's life by giving them community. And that's one of the hardest things I think for us to do right now. People become so isolated to provide that community. And so this is just an example of using the data to do tangible things. It's a really low cost thing for us to do. And so this is kind of one of the last examples. We have a lot of different examples, but I thought this was an interesting one to where staff just really ran with it and said, what can we do to improve this score and improve the lives of our residents? So, next slide.
So,
okay.
First of all, thank you, Mike, for sharing all these examples. I think it's really, really, really interesting, both on the specific services and I think opening my mind and hopefully the rest of our participants' mind to how we can address challenges that come up and how can solutions be, how can creative solutions be inspired, but also how to take a data-driven approach and say, hey, where should we invest our efforts? What should we include in the geo bond? From what we should include in the geo bond, which is a huge decision, to smaller decisions like, how should we implement our public art budget and where would it make the most impact? Recognizing that there is an issue there with the data, taking action, and then measuring the impact of that action. And there's a few things that I want to pick your brain on, but maybe before we dive into, let's ask these questions, then we'll take some of the questions from the Q&A. But I think the first thing I want to ask you from your experiences, you've shown a few different examples here of you found a problem in the data, you found a score that you weren't doing well enough, or on the other hand, with the geobond, like there was an issue you needed, and then you took action. How do you and your staff decide when it's time to take action on the data? What do you see that prompts you to take action?
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, our strategic plan is really important to us. Our count, we use community engagement to build what our purpose is. And so a lot of it is if it aligns with our strategic plan, if it aligns with, one of our areas, our council is being bold and fun. That's a item to where if it aligns with what our strategic plan is, and if we're able to move fast and be able to do it, and think that there's a good return on it, then we free our staff up to make those decisions and move quick on them. And so from our standpoint, we're looking to just be a much more responsive government and not have everything just go through a slow process of a budget. And so that's how we handle it. Going into our budget, we'll analyze the data from the previous year and see where's our deficiencies, what are the major shifts we need to make. So that's our approach to it.
So on that note, I know Sugarland, like many other cities, will face a budget deficit or a little bit of a shortfall from where it was before. How does all this relate to making decisions in budget shortfall, right? Sometimes we think that when there's a shortfall, we need to stay away from residents and not communicate about it. What's Sugarland's approach to some of the decision making there?
Yeah, so the reality is right now, we've got we're implementing a compensation plan that over 5 years is in the ballpark of $40 to $50 million. And so it is a huge, causing a huge financial challenge for us. And so, but we see this as the asset of we have plenty of services to where we're providing such a high level that the community doesn't even necessarily care that the level is that high. So it gives us the ability to scale back some of our services, but not scale it back to the point of like, when is it too far? We have the ability with this. We're surveying every 3 months. We're able to determine what are our scores every 3 months. We can drill down monthly with other questions. And so over these next couple of years, as we become more efficient, as we maybe scale back some services that we're providing because they're the same level of service they've been for 20 years, it gives us the ability to engage and have the community part of that process, being able to do that from my perspective.
I think that's a really, really, really important perspective, because I think a lot of cities are going to be dealing with budget shortfalls, or are dealing from this fiscal year, and thinking about what are the services that we can scale back that will make the least impact for our residents in terms of their expectations and their priorities is a really strong consideration that we don't always take into account in some of that planning. So I think that's a really great approach. And before I continue with my pre-prepared questions, I want to shoot your way a couple of questions from the Q&A that people have been sharing here. So one question from Tony Parker in Greenville, North Carolina. Thank you, Tony. Is about staff's reaction to all this. Tony's asking if there's any resistance from staff or from varying departments around turf issues. And also, there's another question about how much of your staff is dedicated to working with this data, with this platform.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think just culturally, we have changed a lot as an organization. And I'll tell you, data has been a scary thing for a number of our employees. It has been. We just recently were certified by What Works Cities. And so we 2 years ago scored a 3 on their assessment, and a 3 is not good. And so we've had to shift just culturally of as an organization over the next 5-10 years, we've got to become more efficient. We've got to be able to defend what we're doing, and we've got to understand why we're making the decision we're making. And so with our vision of, trailblazing, being relentless, life better than you can imagine, these types of things, our employees, I think, have understood that we've got to change how we are as a city. The way cities have operated the last 20 years is not going to work for the next 20. And so overall, I'll tell you, the pushback's been relatively small. We just did our last pulse survey for our employees, and our engagement scores and our numbers are like 20, 30, 40% higher than they were 2 years ago. So we've had employees, I would say, embrace it. Do all employees embrace it? Absolutely not. It's scary for a number of employees. I think the second part was how many people dedicated to this. I wouldn't. So we have a lot of one of our just core values is collaboration. We expect that everybody is collaborating with each other. We have one group of it. It's an employee created group. They created a data collaborative. It's just a group of employees that said, hey, we want to push data. We want to share data. And so that happened without us creating it. They just created themselves. So they've taken a lead, I would say, with a lot of the city on pushing data, what data is out there. We've got a data and innovation department that handles this to some degree, but it's really, I think, spread out over a number of departments. So it's not just one area that's focused on it.
So another set of questions here revolve a lot around the methodology and how we ensure that we're hearing from residents. And I think there were several questions here about survey fatigue and is the community in Sugar Land feeling over engaged? And before I let you answer that, maybe I'll say a few words just on methodology and technically how some of this works. So again, thanks everybody for the questions. I think just to clarify, survey fatigue is a real issue, and also non-qualified answers, like hearing from people who are not actually residents of the community, things like that, are real problems in some of the more easy online surveys. Zencity's survey methodology is based on very, very rigorous science behind the scenes. But basically, the way we collect responses is that we target people wherever they're spending time online. So, all of us spend time online. As we share, the data shows that 96% of the population is regularly, daily, or weekly active online. And we spend time online in different places: social media, mobile apps, websites. Wherever we spend time online, we see an ad, because that's the business model that powers the internet, right? It could be an ad in our feed on social media. It could be a splash ad that pops up as, an app or a game is loading. It could be a banner ad in a website. And the targeting tools behind these ads are pretty powerful in terms of targeting specific demographics. So what we are doing as a methodology is that we have built technology to buy these ads in a smart way, in a way that will allow us to hear enough responses from each and every demographic group. So we start with the city census and we say, hey, in order to be representative of Sugar Land, we need to hear from 120 Latina women 30 to 45 in this part of the town, and we need to hear from 130 Asian men 50 to 60 in this part of town. We build those targets, and then we start buying ads in an effective way. And the interesting thing here from a survey fatigue standpoint is because people would have anyway seen an ad, and that ad would usually be, I don't know, buy a pair of jeans or buy a new car or whatever you're getting targeted by social media right now. The fact that we're showing them an ad that says, give your feedback to the city, is actually a delightful experience, and people get really, really excited about it. And we see that from our conversion rate numbers and our cost numbers of how easy it is for us to get responses over time. And the interesting part of this for survey fatigue is that because we're not text messaging necessarily, or not, getting in your face, we're taking real estate that would have gone to an ad anyway. People are actually not feeling that burn and are actually somewhat delighted by it. And we're seeing really, really exciting response rates. So that's generally on the methodology. I'll say this from a validation standpoint, we both know who we're targeting. So we're targeting a specific population, like a specific zip code and a specific demographic. And we also ask people to self-report their demographic information. And only if the two confirm do we count that as a valid response. For example, if we were targeting women in a certain zip code, but got a response saying that this is a man in a different zip code, even if it's still reporting to be a Sugar Land resident, we won't count it as a valid response, because we want to make sure that we double verify who we're getting into. So that's how we make sure that we're actually hearing from residents. And this methodology, because it's internet-based and because it has a little bit of a lower barrier to entry, we're able to hear a lot of populations that are usually harder to survey. For example, we can hear from people that are non-English speakers as a first language, because we can show people an ad, not based on what we think the language could be, but on the device that on the language that their device is set to. So if your device is set to Spanish, you'll see the ad pop up in Spanish and the survey will be in Spanish, versus if your device is set to English or Mandarin or any other language that you might be speaking. So that's a little bit of how the methodology works. And I want to turn it over to you more broadly, not just on the survey piece, to say, what have you been hearing from the community in Sugar Land? Do you feel people are like over-engaged, under-engaged? Is there any fatigue there?
Yeah, no fatigue at all. I mean, we listen, for employees, we have fatigue. Our employees are like, stop surveying us, but the public, and I think because, I mean, we're a population of 110,000, so it's not the same people getting it over and over, but we get it whenever it starts coming out. People will say, they'll be excited about it. Hey, we get to provide our input again. Or when somebody doesn't like something, they say, I hope I get chosen for the next community survey. But yeah, we've gotten no complaints about it at all. We've gotten questions about, like, from, in the beginning of, like, what it was, like, why am I getting this? But no fatigue at all from our standpoint. And I don't know if y'all are seeing it take longer to be able to meet your criteria on your surveys, or you still?
No, not at all. We monitor two things, both the time that it takes us to fill a sample and the cost, because the more ads we need to show for one response, the more expensive it is for us to run the survey. And we're staying pretty stable there in Sugar Land, which is very exciting, as in a lot of our customers, again, because this methodology is not dependent on somebody sitting down and calling people, or on responses for mail. We're just targeting people with ads all the time. So it's relatively easy to reach sample. And to your point about the size of Sugar Land, I'll say in bigger cities, we sometimes survey every month and still don't get fatigue. And in smaller cities, we would just sometimes maybe reduce the frequency of service. So if you're in a 20,000 person community, maybe we don't need to survey you every quarter. We can survey semi-annually and still get the the same value of tracking performance.
Yeah.
Um,
One of
there,
the,
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
it just made me think of something. Sorry to cut you off, but one of the other benefits of us doing it quarterly and being able to benchmark it, we have a cohort of cities we benchmark against. We benchmark nationally as well. We got our last community survey back, and we started freaking out because we had our numbers were down, 2%, and so we immediately started going there. But the benefit of having the y'all do the national and the cohort as well was what y'all seen over the last couple of years is just nationally the sentiment has gone down. I mean, just people's reaction to government in general. And so even though some of our scores have gone down maybe 2%, nationally it's gone down a higher percent. So it's been able to provide that context of like, okay, the sky's not falling. This is a kind of a national trend, or this is just the sentiment of the country as it is right now. But that's been very helpful for us and to be able to communicate to our council and our stakeholders as well.
So that's actually a great segue, because one of the questions here was about how do you use benchmarking, and I think you answered that a little bit. I'll love to hear about other ways in which benchmarking has been helpful to Sugarland. I'll just say to your point that in all of our surveys, we include a comparison both to the national benchmark. We run our own survey of serving the entire country on satisfaction, and to a cohort benchmark, meaning we're not just comparing Sugarland, which is a really strong municipality and a really strong city, with a very high quality of life, to any other city. We compare it to a cohort of cities that look very similar in terms of demographics, in terms of household income, in terms of population size, and are able to put that in context. I'll say still Sugarland is an outlier for positive response, but that benchmarking helps, to your point, Mike, put things in perspective. If you're seeing, for example, a decrease, or seeing what is a problem that everybody has versus what is a unique problem of your specific community. So any other thoughts on how benchmarking has been effective?
Yeah, no, well, just the context has been great because being able to just understand just what's the themes nationally, but also we'll get into some areas, and we're kind of high, we hold ourselves to a high standard, and so when we have scores that are in the 80s, we start losing sleep over it. But whenever we're able to like compare it to our cohort, and then nationally, it's a good way to benchmark. But also, we can see our cohort cities and which ones are just really doing a phenomenal job in a certain area. And then it allows us to go kind of meet with them and say, what are y'all doing? Like, what can we learn from you? So it's been helpful from that standpoint as well.
Definitely. And on that point, one of the questions here was around the time frame that it took you as a manager to understand that this is the direction you want to go as an organization, bring everybody along. Like, if you can tell us a little bit about the process that you led your organization in thinking about becoming more, that engagement at every point, and using more data in your process.
I mean, I don't necessarily know how to answer that. I've been city manager here going on 5 years. I started as an intern here in '99, and so when I started in 20, I knew that we're a really strong city. We do really, really good things. There's a lot to be proud of, but we just were not focused on the data side of things. We were not focused on necessarily being able. We had a lot of, I mean, a lot of public trust, a lot of things going in our favor, but I knew that won't always be there. We've got to be able to be a resilient city that is able to truly understand where our services are exceptional and where they're not. And permitting was a good example of that. That crept up, and over time it wasn't really visible, and then it becomes this major issue to where we were doing a really, really poor job there. And so I think you take that along with, and Eyal, I was talking to you a couple years back about the challenge of just things move so much faster now, and your strategic plans move faster now. Everything moves faster now, and our limitation on being able to have this information. And so I think, we went through a visioning process about 2 years ago, and I would say at that point was when I really felt like we had to change as a city. We needed to figure out a way to be more relevant for the next 10 years and be focused on really, really the engaging the public at every step. And so that I would say that's my best shot at an answer.
So maybe, I know we're starting to come up on time. One last question that I want to ask you, which I think relates to that a lot. One of the, it's one thing to have the data and recognize that you need to take action. I think it's definitely the baseline that we need to start from. And your work there is I think, really, really inspiring and hopefully something that a lot of people can learn from. But once you have the data, in order to create a lot of these actions, to shape the geobond, to change the policy around public trust, you have to bring the stakeholders along, and you have to have different stakeholders engaged, whether it's whether it's your team, whether it's your elected officials, whether it's the public, whether it's other partners. Could you tell us a little bit about the process of bringing stakeholders along? Who are the main stakeholders you think about, and how do what work do you do to bring everybody on board?
Yeah, I would say, part of it is just just telling the story of it. As a city, we're changing. It's just and our departments need to understand that we have to, as a city, we can't provide services in the same way. We can't do things in the same way. And so I think whenever we went through our visioning process of just these are the steps that we're going to need to take to be able to serve a community, and quite frankly, a very diverse community. And you look at the turnover in our community, there's a lot. The average residency isn't that long. So the community we have today is different than it was 4 years ago, and it'll be different in 3 years. And so if you're not understanding who your community is and what's important to them, then you're not going to be successful in serving them. And so I think our stakeholders really bought into that this was needed. This data was needed and need to become the focus of what we're doing. You're seeing our departments that before would have been hesitant of a low score, now excited about a low score because they're able to go do things to be able to change that. That's been a shift for us. I mean, we in the past would have struggled with publishing a low score. So, I would say that from our standpoint, the process has been pretty smooth. Now, the reality is we're transitioning to every service. And do I expect pushback with that? Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. Whereas the permits office really, really embraced it and accepted it, and they're really proud of it. You're going to have other areas that I think is going to be much more difficult. But our leadership team understands that this is who we are. It's where we're going. It's not acceptable to not do these things. And so I think I'm not expecting it to be too difficult.
Well, I think that's a really beautiful way of putting it, to shift mindsets from being scared of a negative score to being excited about a negative score, because it means that there's stuff we can do and more improvements we can push for our community. I think is a really, really great summary to me of the work that you've been doing and the approach that Sugar Land has. And I know we're coming up on time. Before we finalize, I want to call out. I know you've been busy talking, Mike, but there's a couple of requests for you here in the chat. One for you to share your job description for the customer services director.
Okay.
That's from Tony Parker from Greenville, North Carolina, and Raji Saravanan from Arlington, Texas, that would love to connect with you. He's from the Arlington, Texas data team. I'd love to learn more from your experience. So thank you, folks, for sharing your requests here on the chat. And mostly thank you to you, Mike. I feel like I've learned a ton, even though I knew a lot of these stories before, about how you're thinking about things and about your approach. And thank you more broadly for your leadership and for your inspiration every time, but especially now with the way Sugar Land has been dealing with the recent crisis. And thank you for taking the time to share all those learnings with us today. We appreciate it.
No, appreciate the partnership. We've got a long way to go, and definitely appreciate your help and the assistance in getting there. So I'm excited for the future.
As you said, we're just getting started. We have 10 more services to deploy in. So thank you everybody for joining you, and thanks ICMA for hosting us today. We'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.
And with that, we must conclude today's webinar. A special thank you to our presenters and to everyone who joined us today, and we hope to see you again soon. Please take a moment to complete a brief evaluation of today's program by returning to the ICMA Learning Lab page where you logged in today. The survey must be completed to unlock your certificate for this program. After completing the survey, you can access your certificate via the Achievements tab at the top of the interface. A recording of today's session will be uploaded to the same place you found the Zoom link in the Learning Lab, along with the slide deck in the additional references section. Today's program is copyright 2024 by the International City County Management Association with all rights reserved. This concludes today's program. You may now disconnect.
Bye, everyone.